Hello.
You say hello, I'll say goodbye.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Just finishing off a little lunch.
Okay, hang on a second. Do you hear me, Chris?
Clearly, yeah. A tiny bit of echo, but I can hear you. It's not
Ay,
bad.
ay, ay.
It's not bad.
Not too bad. All right.
I'm not sure if that's actually echo, maybe more like a reverb thing, but
Yeah, that's like a continuous problem, man. Uh we'll see about fixing this thing. QuickTime Player, Keynote. I'm echoing still?
sorry.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay there.
Oh, no, you sound, I can understand you clearly. It kind of
I'm in
sounds
the,
like you're in the bathroom.
yeah, I'm in the Twitch here,
Hmm.
and I don't know why. Okay. Better?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Okay, let me get myself in here. All right, folks. Give me a second and we're on, and we've got an interesting show today, Chris. So
Cool. Yeah.
yeah, let me
I'm seeing the live emblem. So we are on.
yeah, we're on. I'm lucky I didn't get a guest because Carl has he has some problems. Couldn't make it.
Hmm.
Okay. There we go. All right. Okay, so I got a little presentation to do. Our show today is Gen 4 Redux. We're going to talk about uh, what we that show we had last week with Dr. Chow. And
Okay.
let me get onto the big screen here, if I can. I don't know how to do that, man. But anyhow, last week we had Dr. Chow on. And by the way, welcome everybody, because I know we're live. And sorry for the problems. I'm here for Carl. Carl couldn't make it. This is the Ecomodernist soapbox. Oh, oops, excuse me.
No.
The soapbox. It's the Ecomodernist channel live. And by the way, while I mentioned the soapbox, the Ecomodernist soapbox is on every Wednesday, just to remind everybody. And that's at 8 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific. And so we had Dr. Chow. Yeah. So we had Dr. Chow last week. Dr. Chow is a very famous, a very distinguished person. He has a PhD in, well, I'll give you the rundown right now. Dr. Chow is the author of Complete Perspective of Nuclear Energy. And that's a virtual encyclopedia. It is an encyclopedia of nuclear power, which goes through everything from atomic vaccines, well, not nuclear power, atomic energy, to be more specific, to nuclear weapons, to atomic vaccines. You can find anything in there. It's a very interesting book. And the good doctor has a PhD in nuclear engineering from MIT. And he, as the editor of the Journal of Nuclear Engineering and Design for 17 years, he reviewed more than 3,000 manuscripts submitted for publication in the area of nuclear engineering and other topics. And all that accumulated knowledge allowed him to be in the bird's eye view of being able to create this encyclopedia, which seems very, very few people, maybe just him alone, is capable of doing it. Because, as he said on the show, when you talk to different nuclear scientists and engineers, they're all specialized in this area and that area. So they could talk about nuclear waste, they could talk about proliferation, and et cetera, et cetera. But when you ask, when you really need somebody who has a detailed knowledge of the whole gamut of everything, that's Dr. Chow, because of all of that experience. So anyhow, what I want now, you see my picture here, right? I don't know why I see your picture all the time here, but
well, I'm in the corner as a secondary person. I see you front and center.
Okay, all right. So hopefully my share screen works, and we have a little. I'm going to do a little presentation, and there's two areas where Dr. Chow is.
Quick question here, Gabe.
Yeah, go ahead.
In your earlier introduction, you said he has a virtual book. Is it actually a virtual book online, or is it physical book?
No. I meant virtually. I shouldn't even said virtual. It's an encyclopedia. It basically is an encyclopedia of atomic energy. It's a
physical book you can hold in your hand and throw across the room.
Yes. I doubt if it's anything else than that. I can't see it being an audio book or anything like that. But anyhow, before we even get into that, I want to just get into one area that that was going on just recently, and we're talking about China. So let's get that show on the road. And here you can see this, right? It says China.
Yes.
Yeah, Fukushima. China accused of hypocrisy over its release of wastewater from nuclear plants. It's a recent event, thing that's been going on. Oh my God, I tell you, I think they really laid an egg. They really laid an egg. It's so dishonest. But anyhow, the plant in China releases nuclear plants, I should say plural, in China, releases water with high amounts of tritium, scientists say, calling into question seafood ban imposed on Japan. And Chinese government has been highly critical of the planned water release, branding it as extremely selfish and irresponsible. And I have to wonder, even if that water was very toxic, what other choices the Japanese government had, and what the Chinese government would do if they were in the Japanese government's shoes. I mean, that's so. But you have these international tit for tat going on. I mean, both sides, they're just sniping at each other. They use any little excuse to demonize the other side. It's awful on both sides. But anyhow, tritium in the Chinese nuclear wastewater after Fukushima levels. This is an article from the Japan Times. And the amount of radioactive tritium in wastewater from the Chinese nuclear plants recorded at 13 of the nation's monitoring points in 2021 surpassed the maximum allowable annual amount of materials contained in treated water to be released from the Fukushima plant, according to public data. In other words, they are exceeding the amount of release that's supposed to be going on under international law.
Right. I've got a little snippet there I can add. Anyone who's been following the situation in Japan, I've been following it mostly through the HiroshimaSyndrome.com website, which has had weekly updates ever since 2011. And Japan tightened their radiological guidelines. So Japan has some of the tightest guidelines for radiation in the world. So here saying that it exceeds Japan standards just means that they're in line with a lot of other countries' standards, roughly in alignment with. But it's all this talk about radiation here, radiation there. Some people might get the impression that this is dangerous. It's not. We've been saying this for a decade.
Yeah.
These levels of tritium, or any tritium, pure tritium, really isn't so dangerous because it's you could almost call it impotent as a radiation source. It's so weak.
Yeah, it is infinite. You could not if you could call it is. I mean, it's absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but anyhow, okay. So getting into this, and this is again for the Japan Times article, is the amount of radioactive tritium in wastewater. Oh, we did that already. Sorry. Go to the next one. And so the Chinese are accused of hypocrisy over the release of the wastewater from these nuclear plants, and rightfully so. The amount of tritium, the amount of tritium found in water from the Bayape and Yangjing, I hope to say that right, nuclear plants was around 5 times the maximum annual amount allowed in treated for the treated Fukushima water. Now the amount of the Quinshan nuclear plant discharge is roughly 10 times the maximum annual release set by the Fukushima water standards. Now, we're going on to Dr. To talk about the main subject, and that's going back into China, really. And I wanted to talk about 2 things that really stood out to me in the program that we did last week. The first one I'm going to cover is that Dr. Chow was saying that the next nuclear accident will take place in China. And the other one, which we'll talk about a little later, is that is about the million man. I'm calling it the million man study. Okay, though it's with men and women, for about hormesis. And hormesis, for anyone who don't know, is the idea that small amounts of radiation, low-level radiation, is actually healthy. Though we all know that when you get large amounts, it's bad. It's a lot like exercise or fasting. Very much a similar way that the body takes in radiation, it seems. In other words, when you exercise, you're damaging your body. You're making small tears. You work on your biceps. You're making small tears in your biceps. So if you do that to a certain point, the muscles will get stronger. But you go past that point, you're going to damage the muscle, and that's when people get strained from working out. And it's like fasting in the sense that, and this is a proven fact too, by the way, that if you go without food for a long amount of time, long enough, like 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. I mean, I'm not saying you should do it. You should really talk to your doctor, folks, if you're going to do it first. But you could go. People could go. I've gone actually. And when I was young, I went in a fast for 28 days, a supervised fast. So that actually rejuvenates your body. Cleans it out totally, and what happens is and we're getting off the subject a little, but the body just gets rid of all the bad elements in order to maintain itself while you are without food, and maybe even consumes them for energy. I couldn't say, but at the end of it, of course, if you go too long, you're going to starve to death. So that's the kind of thing. So I mean that's kind of thing. Go ahead.
Our mutual friend, Dr. Al Scott, over the past several months has been talking to a lot of nutrition and biology experts, and he had someone on not too long ago that was a very strong proponent of occasional fasting.
Oh yeah,
like going 12 to 24 hours, maybe once a week.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
provided you don't have any other medical issues. But he was a very strong proponent on the Rational View podcast with Dr. L. Scott just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's very solid. This is very solid science, by the way. You know, it's funny. I have a friend. I'm just getting off subject again. I have a friend who's like he's very into naturopathy and he's very against modern medicine. He said, why don't the doctors just tell everybody go take a fast for a week or 2 weeks or something like that instead of giving out these pills, you know? But
Right. But yeah, back to hormesis and stuff.
yeah,
Hormesis isn't just radiation. Hormesis is any potentially dangerous substance for the most part. In tiny amounts can be helpful, like people who are snake handlers that go out and deal with snakes to help protect other people in the public. They take little bits of venom and they build it up over time. That's an
yeah.
example of hormesis. And there's what arsenic will kill you, but pretty much all of our bodies have very tiny micrograms of arsenic, which, if I remember correctly, is assists in the conduction of electricity through our nerve cells. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
very tiny amounts of a poison can be good for you, but as I said, very tiny. And
Depending on the
radiation is
depending on the
a pretty
poison. Yeah,
weak, yeah. In
yeah.
general, radiation is a pretty weak poison to our bodies, but
Yeah.
huge amounts can overwhelm our bodies. So anyway, go ahead there,
Absolutely.
Gabe.
Absolutely. And by the way, I think it was on one of our shows, I think it was Robert Zubrin, I believe, said that even if if you drink enough of it, could be toxic for your body.
Yeah,
You know?
Dr. Chris Kiefer has mentioned that in the past.
Yeah, yeah. But anyhow, getting back to we're getting on subject, but that's okay because this is all interesting conversations we're having, so it's no big deal. But we're getting back into what we're talking about, the Chinese and nuclear safety. So this is an article about nuclear safety in China in the Nature magazine, and it says nuclear safety lies in greater transparency. With ambitious expansion plans, China must work to create a robust and reliable nuclear regulatory system. And you can see that right there. And here's the author of the article, is Quang Wang, is director of the Western Research Center for Energy and Eco-Environmental Policy at the Xinjiang Institute of Ecology and Geography of the Science, oh boy, and Geography of Chinese Academy of Science at Urumqi. I don't know if I messed it up. And his views are his own, but this guy is, he's has this article out, and it makes me hopeful in this regard. If this kind of stuff is out there and he's putting this out, and he is the director of environmental policy in China, it would seem that my take from that is that the Communist Party realizes this and is publicizing it, and is allowing this to be publicized and everything. But I don't know. I'm guessing there, but I'm hopeful that they could change things, because the Soviet government in the USSR, a big reason why they went down is because of Chernobyl. And so this is the sort of thing that if they don't TCB, take care of business in that regard, and something really major happens, it could threaten the legitimacy of the Communist Party and the state as a result. Even if the accident is not anything but I lay odds that very, very few people, if any, would be killed in a nuclear accident anyhow. But anyhow, moving on. This is the same article in Nature. That nation, China's industry rules and guidelines are decades out of date, and the country has no coherent legal system to govern the use of nuclear energy. Furthermore, China has taken no effective action to reform, and China's ability to monitor and ensure nuclear safety is undermined by a cozy relationship between state-owned nuclear regulators and state-owned operators, as well as a revolving door that allows staff to move frequently between government and industry. And by the way, that's the same thing that happens with regulators in the United States. It's called regulatory capture, it's referred to. So that's not something that's unique to China.
Except in China's instance, everything being built is government owned, and the government is the regulator. It gets back to what the U.S. had perceived problems with the AEC. AEC was to promote nuclear and to regulate it, and the Chinese government's in the same position, basically. So it's
everything in nuclear, that's true. Outside of nuclear, that's not so much true, though, just because there's a lot of private enterprise in China. But go ahead, Chris.
Well, that was just basically done.
All right. Okay, at present, China's nuclear policy making relies too heavily on closed expert panels. And because most of the nuclear institutes in China are subsidiaries of the nuclear utilities, the majority of experts involved in evaluating proposals to build nuclear reactors are affiliated with nuclear operations. It's pretty much repeating what he said before, just a different way. But the public is invited to comment on environmental impact assessments on planned projects, but is given just 10 days to do so, making thorough and independent evaluation of nuclear safety virtually impossible. And I'm not so worried about the public having the 10 days as the experts having more time. Because, I mean, I've been to that kind of meetings with the NRC, and it's just like people ranting away, you know.
And you got the EPA as well, and FDA. They also have similar hearings. But 10 days, that's that pretty much. It should probably be more like 60 days, 90 days. 2 years might be too long. 2 years is probably too long. But
probably is.
But 60 days or 90 days for people to think about it and to make a little bit of research and to get out maybe and visit the actual site in person and talk to the locals to get a feel for all the little nuances. 10 days, just 10 days is railroading something through.
But I will say this in the Chinese favor. The Chinese, when it comes to social media, the Chinese and scientific subjects, especially subjects that are controversial, the only people that are allowed to post statements and memes or whatever on Chinese social media about scientific subjects are scientists. And you could comment and you could talk, you could interact with that scientist, but there ain't some, you don't get, it's not allowed that you have some kind of idiot coming on saying, the tritium is gonna kill us all, but the government is doing it. They're saying it with the Japanese themselves, that's ridiculous too, because they have they should be making the people not afraid of nuclear power, But anyhow, okay, so China needs to do more reform and strengthening its nuclear safety system. It must aim, and this is all from the article, it must aim for greater transparency and public involvement and giving them longer-term financing to carry out independent nuclear research, especially in nuclear software. But most urgently, China needs to set up a comprehensive legal framework to govern nuclear energy and give responsible for reactor safety to independent, credible, and authoritative regulatory bodies. Now, the Qinshan nuclear plant in eastern Zhejiang progress. No, that's from the previous thing. I'm sorry. So going on to the quote unquote million man study, which might be a little male chauvinist, but women are included in that, of course. And let's talk about that. And that's the when Dr. Chow said that they did a meta study of all the about hormesis, and the results were that that of the study was that hormesis is good for you. That the low level nuclear radiation is good for you. And as you brought up a long time ago, there was a study, and I would mention that they did with they took away all the radiation and whatever they did.
Mhm.
You know about that study, right? You know a little more than me, Chris?
That's one James Conker wrote about a decade ago in his Forbes column that he had at that time. It happened at the WIP facility, the salt mines there, and basically there's a new corridor being opened up, and they let them have first access to it before waste was stored there, and they went in and they took several weeks to do a study and took radiation away from everything, and it didn't get to zero, but it got very, very close to zero. And the within the cells, the cells just got sluggish. All the workings within the cell, the making sugar through the my was it mitosis? Not mitosis, but
Mitochondria?
mitochondria. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mitochondria just got sluggish and slower and slower. And if the mitochondria are not producing energy, aren't doing their work with the sugars, then the cell dies.
Yeah.
And so things start dying, amoebas, plants, cell cultures. And then they'd bring in one tiny, little tiny uh, bit of something that's radioactive, cesium, strontium, whatever it was, and just put it like an inch or two away from the petri dish or the plant, whatever they had there. And within a few hours, it would suddenly be doing better. And within a day, it'd be back to normal health. And so the basis of that was that basically on a cellular level, plants and animals and probably humans cannot survive without some low levels of radiation. And so if we get down to like 1/100th of our current radiation levels of background radiation levels, we may not, we'll have to adapt, or we'll have to create radiation for our environment for us to survive. Not that that's even remotely likely, but there was that study that was done. James Conco was involved. He helped looked at the geologic formations of several places to try and do it, and you can't do it in marble because marble has small bits of uranium and thorium in it. And so he decided on the salt mines, which were conveniently already being worked at through WIP, worked on. So yeah, there's a new channel being opened up for eventual storage of nuclear waste, and
That's
they have
encouraging.
access to it. So that they had that access. So yeah, if people are worried about radiation, tell them, well, you realize you're going to die if you ever had zero radiation.
So tell me a little more about that. That's in other words, that's already approved, and they're going to be able to store spent nuclear fuel in that facility in the United States. I think that's in Texas, isn't it? I believe.
No, it's near Carlsbad Caverns,
Oh, okay.
which
Okay, New Mexico. Okay.
New Mexico, But they
Yeah.
that facility's been open for a long time. They
Oh,
got
good.
multiple tunnels. I mean, it's been open for decades, but they as they go in deeper and as they fill up the portions are already dug out, they can continue digging into the salt mine. They could continue storing things there for probably a couple of centuries easily, is my understanding. If they get permission, they can using it that long. But they
I think James Conca, he did a show about waste, and he said he was referring to that. He said a billion years it could stay in there.
Well, the waste can stay in there, but I'm talking about putting more and more in there. I
Yeah.
Eventually, we'll dig out all the salt, and there won't be a salt mine anymore. It'll be an open pit with nuclear waste, and that's not what they want. They want to remain having several feet of salt around each of the canisters, especially
Yeah,
at depth, because the depth ends up crushing them. So they're much smaller than they were
yeah,
when they initially put them in, which is
yeah. That's true. I remember
yeah,
that show.
permanent storage.
I don't think it's a problem because I remember which an excellent show that was, and I think you
Mhm.
can find it in our. By the way, you can find it in our archive, of the Ecomodernist channel. I'm pretty
And we,
sure.
we've I think we've had Conk on 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, we did. And he said that area is 16 square miles underground of salt. So I don't they could that sounds like the whole freaking world's spent fuel you could put in there, without a problem. But anyhow, moving on. Okay, so this is the article that it was referring to: health impacts of low dose ionizing radiation. Actually, it's a study, current scientific debates and regulatory issues. And I'm going to try to contact these people and get one of these people on one of our future shows. But okay, anyhow, and they describe, the methodology. And he said the only studies described effects of low to moderate doses, cumulative meaning less than 500 millisieverts. And I remind everybody who probably already know, 100 millisieverts and below is considered safe dose. And so the 500 up to 500 millisieverts were included in this literature search. The outcomes involved in our analysis included both incidence and mortality data. So they looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly is what they're basically saying. So the only studies describing effects. Okay, yeah. The immune response have been repeatedly demonstrated to be stimulated by low dose exposures. So it helps your, what they're saying, that helps your immune system. They've shown that.
Mhm.
And there's also some preclinical experimental evidence that low dose radiation can be used in the treatments of several non-cancer diseases, such as autoimmune diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, as well as diabetes and diabetic cardiovascular complications. And there's also some evidence, by the way, that low dose radiation could have been used in the fight against COVID. And it's too bad that they never really,
Mhm.
brought that out.
Oh,
It would have saved a lot of lives, I would bet.
yeah. Well, more moderate dose, right when they were about to go into a coma because of the was it the T cells over responding, and they right as they were putting people in coma, or a few hours before they would put people in a coma, they could have given them basically an old-fashioned X-ray to the chest, which is what people used to cure. It was like 70, 80 years ago. They were using X-rays to cure pneumonia. And
Mm,
basically, what kills you from COVID isn't the COVID; it's the uh, response,
of the body,
similar
of the immune
response in the
system.
lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah, your
Yeah, it's
lungs
like I
fill up.
said. Yeah, it's like I said, stimulates the immune system. And
Yeah,
that's
and
exactly what you need to do.
what stimulates and or resets. I've heard some people compare it to resetting. The immune
Mm,
system is doing the wrong thing, making you worse, and it resets it. So then it says, "Oh, what was I thinking? I'm sorry, I should be doing this other thing," and then it cures that pneumonia-like situation in your lungs, and people can survive. But yeah, it was basically an X-ray to the lungs. It could have saved probably 80 or 90% of the people that died.
wow.
Is
That's
is
that
is
that
my
that's
understanding, and perhaps I misunderstand slightly, but it was extremely effective if administered at the correct time,
yeah,
which was like 10 to 30 hours before they go into a coma.
right. And by the way, that's what Dr. Chow referred to as the atomic vaccine. Is it? And what he says is that in the
Mhm.
future, once we've gotten past the stupidity of L and T, which is it's getting to be ridiculous at this point. It's always been shaky, but once we get past that, and he says, once we really learn to recognize in the scientific community, this is actually a good thing, then that there will be, he believes, and he's speculating, of course, that there will be, people will go for annual X-rays, which would be what he calls the quote unquote atomic vaccine, which will boost their immune system. And
I wouldn't mind doing that.
yeah, you know what? I tell you, I'm you know, after seeing that show and reading all this stuff, I'm getting less agnostic about hormesis, you know. But anyhow, radon treatments they mentioned is considered to be a legitimate tool by mainstream medicine in Europe, especially for treating arthritis and other inflammatory diseases. And it's actually, ironically, it's very popular in Germany, which are the most radiophobic people probably in all of Europe and maybe even on the planet, you know. But moving on, the level of natural background radiation varies substantially, sometimes, this is talking about across the planet, by 2 orders of magnitude. And this is referred to as the high natural background radiation areas. And some regions, such as I'm going to mash this up, Guarapari, Brazil, Kerala, India, Ramsar, Iran, and Yangjiang, China, natural background radiation can reach several hundred millisieverts a year. And I remind our viewers that 100 or below is considered safe, and which would kind of be implied that 100 and below is a extremely conservative figure. For example, in Ramsar province, Iran, the total annual effective dose reaches 260 millisieverts a year. Some studies,
that's the high point, yeah. And that can vary house to house. So that's some houses might be under 50 in Ramsar, but some there have been a handful that were reached 260 per year.
Yeah, that's the max. That's the max of the area. It does vary all over the place. Yes, that's true. But anyhow, some studies were conducted to investigate the potential relationship between high-level background radiation and health outcomes and the exposed populations, primarily about cancer, but of other things as well. So, now we're going to a clinical studies conducted by Harvard University. Low-level total body and half-body irradiation was used for treatment of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. For 4 years after the beginning of this trial, 70% of the low-dose irradiated patients were still alive, while only 40% survived in the control group that were treated with chemotherapy. That's like almost twice as much of the people survived. And and these findings were later confirmed in similar preclinical and clinical studies conducted in Japan. This is interesting. The price tag of radiation protection, and we'll go talking about LNT, is about 5,000 times higher than of the protection of workers from all other and more probable events. It can therefore be said, this is from the study, that each statistical life saved by nuclear regulation, if LNT is valid, and that's assuming that it is valid, right? Were 15 to 5,000 statistical murders. And what they mean by statistical murders is that when you're putting all this focus into something that's basically useless, you're taking away resources from protecting people who otherwise might be saved. Which
no, that's not what it means, Gabe.
No, it's not.
Statistical murders means that if LNT is true, then there would be more people dead. So we're going to assume more people died, and they just didn't have that written on the death certificate. Kind of like when people say 4,000 people or more died from Chernobyl. Those are statistical deaths. Those are
Okay.
statistical deaths, and people may have actually died, but they didn't die from the radiation or the nuclear exposures, the fallout exposures. Those are statistical deaths. So if LNT is true, then we got a lot of dead people coming our way. But
Yeah,
if it's
yeah,
not
okay.
true, yeah, you're just blowing smoke in everyone's face.
Well, thank you for
And
that
then,
correction. Yeah.
mhm.
I mean, I've never heard of statistical murders before, so I didn't realize that was already a thing,
I think
you know.
Wade Ellison's also used that term in the past, and so
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of ridiculous though. But anyhow, all right. So the conclusion is radiation safety regulations are based on LNT model. That there's a growing body of evidence that low dose radiation, such as using X-ray imaging and CTs, actually promotes health rather than posing a risk. In light of the new data, LNT is considered at least doubtful and often obsolete by a growing number of researchers. And even we assume that LNT is correct, there is a growing concern at the present that the present unreasonable stringent radiation protection radiations is by far not the best way to protect public health. So they need to make some changes. And you can see that right there. And I believe that is the end of this little thing. So let me stop the share and you can see my face again. So,
oh, please, wear my glasses.
I know that's a scary thing, folks. But
No,
I'm here again.
but
So,
and we'll have a follow up on this subject, I think, with
yeah.
Mike Conley probably in a few months. He has a book about linear no threshold and radiation. Yeah, I don't think he
Mm,
mentions hormesis a lot, but it's built into that. His book is more about uh, the line, how we got to where we are in regulation, which came basically people kept backing up the line that Herman Muller gave during his Nobel Prize acceptance speech back in the 1950s. And so they kept doubling down. And there were so few radiation experts, no one wanted to step up and say, I don't think this is correct. At least very few people did. They do so in private, possibly, but not in public, is what is my understanding. And so we have the regulations we have today, which are much too strict and not in line with actual scientific knowledge.
yeah, yeah. And they they mentioned in line with that, they mentioned in the study, because I got into the whole thing, how even though the numbers are to these all these different claims look very big, they don't consider them to be statistically significant in most cases. But it's like this is like circumstantial evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Have they hung people on circumstantial evidence? I'm sure they have,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's if you get enough circumstantial evidence, I mean, you could the odds of it being not a circumstance become less and less in the aggregate. So
There's a movie about that called the Oxbow Incident with
oh,
Henry Fonda.
excellent movie. I saw that. Oh,
That
folks, you got to
was
see
totally
that, man.
circumstantial. A cowboy just meanders into a situation, and uh, yeah, and they say, "You're the only stranger here. You must be the one that did this," and they string him up and hang him.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the best movies I saw. I think that, and my favorite from that period was the dramas is Bogey. What was the one he did? Treasure of Sierra Madre. But anyhow, that's
Oh,
another
that
one.
okay.
Yeah, that was like those are some intense movies, man.
Yeah, I
You
like
know.
Bogey with his wife, Lauren Bacall.
Oh
Those
my
three
God, great
movies are
person,
excellent.
but great couple too in real life and
Mhm.
everything.
Well, they were,
They
yes.
They were. But anyhow, they also mentioned this study, but I didn't mention it in my report about the higher the elevation that people are, the more radiation they receive. And people in higher elevations tend to be, they tend to live longer.
Mhm.
And I think it's very hard, and I think they mentioned in the study, it's hard, really hard to separate the signal from the noise, because the fact is this, I mean, people who live in areas of the world where there's a lot of inclines live longer too. And there's a reason for that. It has nothing to do with radiation. That's mountainous areas. When you get high up, you're going into mountains. Because
Mhm.
when you got to walk up and walk down and walk up and walk down instead of walking in a straight line, you get a lot more exercise, and that will increase your
Mhm.
lifespan. So I didn't
Well,
know that was worthy of being included, but they,
also the higher radiation at altitude also well, in a nutshell, it's a hormetic effect. It cuts your chances of cancer down by 20, 30, 40%.
yeah, I could believe that. You know. But yeah, but I tell you what, I can't. I mean, my family on my wife's side, they're from she's Peruvian and 15,000 feet above sea level. Oh
Mhm.
my God. For people, if you live on sea level, you go up there, man. The first time I went up there, I got nosebleeds. I tell you, it's like
Mhm.
that, you get headaches. Oh my God. But
Did your wife have problems when she came down to low altitude?
she did a little bit, not as
Okay.
much as, but what she did find too was that when she came back after a while and stuff, because if she goes back and forth a lot, but when she comes back, and it's been a while, she's always got to adjust to it, and
Mhm.
she's got to go, just like it's like the getting the it's like I don't know what it's awful. The headaches are,
It, yeah,
oh my God.
it's half as bad as deep sea divers and getting the bends, probably, is what
Yeah.
I would compare it to.
Yeah. But anyhow, that's pretty much the story here. Um, and by the way, we will be having some interesting shows coming up. I just let people know. We have one show by a lady. I forget the name of these people, but it's Nuclear for Africa. It'll be probably on this month, talking about the
Princey
situation.
and Bethany.
Yes, she'll be coming
Okay,
on. It's a matter of
awesome.
setting it up. Also, I forget his name, but he's a communications professor in Europe, and he's been writing a lot about how Greenpeace, the imperialism of Greenpeace, in that they're forcing governments, they're forcing these governments of these poor African nations to not accept GMO crops, and even though that, and it's hurting their economies, and it's really it's objectively evil, and there's been a lot of Greenpeace is getting a lot of bad press from that, and also from the support for shutting down the nuclear reactors in Germany. And so that's a couple of things coming up, and so just to kind of let you know. So you got anything to say, Chris?
Um, Not specifically. I can give our general outro phrase, but
Yeah.
emissions first, peace and justice will follow.
Yes, that's right. So I guess we will end on that, folks, and we will be seeing you next week. We're hopefully joined by Carl, who is perhaps a little more eloquent than me. I don't know. I'm trying to be humble, but maybe I'm just bragging in a way.
Well, his beard's darker anyway.
Yeah. Okay, folks. So See you next week. And by the way, check us out at ESNA.earth, ESNA.earth for our webpage. And while you're there, give us a little donation, $2 a month. Less than a cup of coffee, you won't even miss it. But every little bit helps. Of course, we're on next week at 2:00 Eastern again. And we're on Soy Idol TV. That's on Twitch. And you could participate with asking your questions. I'm not able to, I don't know who's asking questions or making statements because I just don't have the hookup that Carl has. So don't think I'm being rude, folks, if I ignore you. I'm not doing it on purpose. And yeah, so that's it. So everybody stay well. And was it, I keep forgetting that thing.
Emissions.
Emissions first. Peace and justice will follow. I don't know how many times I've heard that, and I still can't remember it. That's my old age showing. Anyhow, folks, adios.